Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for another soul-driven interview. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Jenn Mansell, a certified breathwork facilitator and somatic coach who helps people reconnect with the inner wisdom of their bodies through the power of the breath. Her gift is bringing people together in safe spaces to have deeply transformational experiences that incorporate breathwork, meditation, movement, and music. Tell me I pronounced your last name right.
Oh yeah, you nailed it. You did great. Yes.
I got to get better at checking with names because I can just destroy them sometimes. Welcome to the show, Jen. I'm so excited to have you here. I've been wanting to geek out on breathwork for a while. I have a lot of questions, and so thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So a little bit of background on Jen. I can't even remember how I came across you online. It's the wonderful part of social media, right? But I
Yeah.
signed up for one of your breathwork courses earlier this year, and which I loved. One of the big things I loved is just to kind of kick it off, you had like a whole dance session, and I was just
Mm,
like, this is the way to go to like shake
yeah,
off those nerves on the front end. Um,
absolutely.
so I wanted to have Jen on the show, and of course, thank you for being here. So let's just dive in. The first question I ask all of my guests: what makes you soul driven?
Mm. Well, I guess for me now, I am I would consider myself soul driven because I'm not really following so much of my mind's agenda and more so um what my heart calls me to do and to create. And I really believe that I'm here, for a reason to help support other people to walk the path of healing that I've been on for a while now. And so I just keep following. I just keep following the, like the crumb, the breadcrumb trail. And I feel like that to me is what it means to follow your soul's calling, is just to, follow the next crumb and the next crumb and the next crumb, and not have it all mapped out or planned out, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun that way. So yeah, that's how I flow in my business, and that's how I flow in my life as well.
Which requires a lot of patience, right?
Mm.
I mean, because if you don't know where you're going necessarily, I mean, maybe you have like an overview, but you don't know how you're going to get there. And so it's just one crumb at a time. Like, how is it that you're able to kind of stay in that space without like jumping many steps ahead at a time, or like getting really frustrated and maybe off course? Or
Yeah. I like to play with intention a lot. So, um, intention with non-attachment. So I love being like, okay, like one thing for me, I live in Toronto, deep in the city, and I know that I'm going to move back to the country. I grew up out in the, more rural areas. I know I'm moving back there. I can see it, I can feel it. I have no clue when that's going to happen, and I try not to figure it out, and I don't attach myself to when and how it's going to happen. And yes, sometimes my mind goes there, but I try to just keep coming back to, like, I have a deep knowing. I just know that's what will happen when the timing is right. And it's this constant game of noticing when you're getting in your own way and holding on really tightly to things needing to be a certain way, and then kind of practicing like loosening your grip. And I mean, that's really why I love breath work. And I know we're going to talk a whole bunch about breath work today, but breath work has really taught me how to be in the unknown, and to find a deep sense of trust that um, life is supporting our highest creation.
I love that. I love that, being in the unknown. Because with my experiences of breathwork, that's exactly what it is.
Exactly, right?
Um, so I want to come back to that, and I definitely, like, we're going to fully jump into breathwork, but I'd love to know more about you first, and
Mm-hmm.
just have a better understanding of, your background, your story. You mentioned a bit ago, like, your healing story. I know from, of course, reading on your website, you've gone through a lot to come to this place. But if you
Yeah.
could share with us, some about your background, and how, you came to this work.
Yeah. I was, quite sick as a child. And I, had a big spirit, and a lot of energy and expression, but felt trapped in my body, really, because I had so many allergies and, my God, you name it. I was basically a bubble child, like couldn't go outside, couldn't, do all these things. Was very, very sensitive. Um,
Did you have like something specific, or were you just very allergic to a lot of things and very sensitive to life in general?
yeah, so I had an adverse reaction to a vaccine when I was 18 months old. And so that kind of lit a inflammatory fire in my body, we'll call it. And I had really, really bad eczema. So rashes head to toe, which turned into like food allergies and asthma, and it just kept going. And then it was digestive problems, and then it just kept going. And so by the time I was in my teenage years, I had been in and out and in and out of the hospital. I had done Western, I'd walked far down the Western medical path. And I mean, maybe this goes back to being soul driven, but when I was 16, I had this knowing in myself that I that there were answers for me. Someone had answers for me, and I was not going to give up. And so I told my parents I was going to seek alternative treatment, like I knew what that was when I was 16. I don't know. I didn't know. And 2 days later, I found like a newspaper clipping that said like the natural doctor. And I went to this man who I still think he's like a weird wizard. He lived in a cabin in the woods and like just had a little fireplace in his office. And I walked in there and I sat down and he said to me, "You're not sick, and your body can completely heal itself." And I just was like, I don't even know. That was the first time in my entire life that I felt like somebody gave me some kind of hope.
Wow. I
So,
can't imagine what that must have been like after going through, because I mean, how did you even, um, I used to get poison ivy really badly as a child. And I mean, it was cool. I remember getting it on my face once, and my face swelled up so bad. And my mother was like, I understand what it would be like to have a deformed child. Like, I mean, it was
yeah.
awful. I was super allergic to it. I can't imagine dealing with that for so many years. Like, I love that you had this hope inside of you at 16, but what like kind of kept you going through all of that? Because that must have been hard, right?
Yeah, it was very hard. Um I think there's parts of me that like to forget about it. But it was really hard on my self-esteem, um and I think it really separated me from actually like really connecting with people because I was having such an incredibly different inner world experience, um, than other people were. And a lot of what helped me through, which is so interesting, is I got really, really good at self soothing. Like, I really learned how to soothe myself with music, with movement, with dancing. I danced. S- s- um, I had a swing and a hammock, and like I would just for hours, like just soothe myself. And so,
Mm.
um, there's no surprise that I got into doing all of this somatic work because it was like what I was doing instinctively to help manage my discomfort.
That's
Um,
incredible.
yeah.
Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a younger sister.
Okay.
She, of course, did not have any health problems. So always the case with siblings, one is chocolate and one is vanilla. um, so yeah, it was really a rough ride. And I think because of that, I didn't always get to be a kid, I had a lot to think about. I couldn't just, here's a small example. I couldn't just go and sleep over at someone's house because I was probably allergic to their laundry detergent. So I couldn't sleep
Mm.
in their bed. I couldn't use their towels. I had to if I was going to go to a friend's house, I'd had to take my own sheets and like all sorts of things. So it was a lot. It was a lot. But I don't know, somehow fiercely determined to be free, I think. Yeah. And to feel like I didn't have to every single day be like managing my symptoms.
Yeah, it sounds like you had, and this sounds trite, I feel like, but it sounds like you had that light inside of you, that was just kind of like, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. This isn't going to be forever. It's not always going
Yeah.
to. So when you met this gentleman at 16 and he was like, you're not sick, how was he able to help you?
Yeah, he was like a super old school homeopath and naturopath and herbalist, and he would mix me up all kinds of concoctions and things. Um and what he gave me in my first time visiting him, within 2 weeks I was like almost 50% better.
Wow.
Um and it wasn't fancy things, it was like probiotics and simple things like that that just no one else had knew to give to me. Um And so I continued to go back every single week. My parents paid for me to go every week. And eventually I apprenticed with him basically. I wanted to learn everything that he knew. So he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about healing and the body, and a lot about detoxification and how do you support the body to just get rid of the stuff it doesn't need any longer. Um And then from there, I was, obviously fascinated about the stuff. I studied food science. I studied holistic nutrition. Kind of went down this path of like physical healing first because I needed to physically heal.
Well, and he must have been I mean, how long did you study with him?
I mean, I was 16, so I don't know if it was like proper studying, but I showed up at his cabin,
You're
every
like,
week.
I'm
And
here. I'm not leaving. I want to know.
he's like, tell me more
I
about
would have
Mercury.
been following him around too.
And he was like, he was into some weird shit. So um, it was quite interesting. So I went to him from the time I was 16 till I was, into my 20s, over a number of years. And what happened to me during that time was very intense because the only way to manage eczema that they currently have is covering your body in steroid creams. I went through something called toxic steroid withdrawal, which no one tells you about. When you stop using the creams, like cortisone creams, then your body basically like goes into panic because you've suppressed all the inflammation. You stop taking them or using them, and your whole body then has to like detox from all of the steroids. So I went through like 5 years of um my face would like double in size and swell up, and my eyes would swell shut, and like it was awful. It was
Wow.
really awful. And that was a really long journey, and it kept me very motivated to continue to find ways to um, get out of the suffering.
Yeah. My sister, my younger sister, she has colitis, and when it gets really out of control, she has to go on steroids, and it's just steroids are so intense for the body. I mean,
Yeah.
that's huge. So I'm curious, like, what did it feel like to go from studying with him or whatever, to jumping into like school studying or those kinds of, because I've heard so many people go into these programs and then just get completely disenchanted with the entire industry. So I'm curious what that switch must have been like for you.
Yeah, I think it was I always talk to people who've gone through school to study nutrition, and I always tell this joke. It's true, but I think it's a joke. It's like the night before my last exam at nutrition school, I sat on my porch eating chips and smoking cigarettes because I was so stressed out. I was so stressed out and so overwhelmed because when you deep dive into learning about health and all this stuff, it can get very confusing and very overwhelming as to like, you can, I just felt like everything is bad. I can't eat anything. I can't do anything. I don't even know what to do anymore. Um, so yeah, that journey was I always say changed my life, gave me like the fundamentals of nutrition that I will have with me my entire life, that I have passed on to family members and people in my community. But it's certainly, when I got out in the world and started to practice and work with people, I started to realize very quickly that helping people change how they feel and how they are in the world is, requires so much more than just telling them to eat broccoli and, don't drink so much coffee. It's so much deeper. And I was lucky enough while I was at nutrition school to meet this woman who was an energy healer. Um, and she taught us a class called Psychology of Disease. And she was like channeling our classes, all sorts of stuff. Um, and I was just, once again, I was like, I don't know who this woman is or what the hell she's talking about, but I'm so into it. And then I apprenticed with her for a while. So, um, that taught me all about the world of energy healing and things. And then I eventually from there went on to train in life coaching because I was working at this women's clinic, doing nutrition session after nutrition session. And really, like, these women wanted to talk about their kids, how they can't sleep, the fights they're having with their husband, why can't he just change? And they want to talk about their stress and their relationship struggles and their inner struggles. And I felt so ill-equipped to help them in that regard, but knew that if I could, then they could probably actually make the physical changes that they wanted to. So,
Because
yeah.
it's all like, that's the root of it, right? I mean, it's like going to the doctor and just, them just handing you pills. They're not getting to the root of what's actually going on. They're just treating what is. So maybe
Yeah.
help someone change their diet for a certain amount of time, but they've got all the emotional stuff, then it's not going to last very long. Um,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think like as I peeled the layers back on my own healing journey and started to realize like, oh, it's not just drinking green juice and doing colonics. Like I was doing all those things and I wasn't getting better.
hmm. Are you still
And
talking about like the eczema, or are you talking about like emotionally, mentally, or?
yeah, I was still struggling physically. Like I had made a lot of progress, but took me 5 years to detox all the steroids, and then after that, it was like my body was still in a pretty rough state, It was more stabilized, but I was still having a lot of issues. So I finally got to this place where I was like, okay, I'm doing everything right, but I'm not getting better.
I know about that place so much.
Yeah. And
Ultimate frustration.
ultimate frustration. Yeah. Because it's like our mind, I talk about this a lot with breathwork. It's like our mind loves to dominate and control our body, or thinks it can, which is this like illusion. And so I really got into this pattern of, if I just do all the things right and I do, all the saunas and all the this and that and I'm very rigid, then my body's going to respond. And I've since learned that like the body's doing its own damn thing and it does what it does when it's ready. And the best thing you can do is get your head out of the way, stop trying to control it and fix it and dominate it and change it, and let your body do what it is already knows how to do and give it the support that it needs to keep doing that.
I really like that. Yeah, the Ashley, who you and I were kind of briefly speaking before this about your being a somatic coach, and Ashley, who I'd interviewed a couple months back, she really talked about how, and I love this. I will definitely hook you up with her because she's amazing. I think you will really enjoy her work, but she brings a whole new perspective to embodiment that I just haven't seen before. But one of the big things that I loved and walked away from that conversation with, that I'm still going back to constantly, is like, my body isn't my enemy. It is constantly just trying to rebalance for me and trying to work with me, And that's such a massive mind shift for me because, as women, of course, I mean, like, whether I think you're dealing with something like eczema, and I just feel like that adds to it. But like, you grow up in this world where you're supposed to look one way and do one thing and whatever the case may be. So there's already that. And then if you have a mother who's not happy with her body, then that's piled on. And then, like, you know what I mean? It just keeps going. So you have all of these ideas. And then of course, if you've been dealing with sickness, and I have on and off my entire life as well, you really come to a place where you think like, my body is just out to destroy me, and like with autoimmune disorders, they're like, your body's eating itself away, and it's like, you get this whole mentality going on. So I love that you shared that, because I know that, like, just in speaking with Ashley and her just kind of throwing that out there, I mean, I've just like, like chewed on that and like have started like replaying it in my mind. But that's a big evolution, I think, in regards to perspective change, for someone.
Massive. Yeah. Yeah, that I see this so much in the clients that I work with, this feeling like their body is against them and is like the enemy and won't do what it wants them to do. And yeah, something really big and powerful shifts when you reconnect. It's like you reestablish that new relationship of, hey, I respect you. When you have symptoms, I listen because I know that's how you speak to me. When you have pain, I listen because I know that's how you're getting my attention. Oh, something is inflamed. Okay, I'm going to let that be a sign that you need something that maybe can support you to work with that. Like, it's a totally different relationship. And on my journey back to that harmonious relationship, I really had to work through a lot of my own trauma around, there were many moments and many times in my life that I felt like a lot of fear, like I was going to die. once I was with a bunch of friends at a cabin way out in the middle of nowhere, and I had an asthma attack, and everyone was drunk and no one could drive me anywhere. So I drove myself to the hospital, which was like 40 minutes from where we were, not breathing, barely breathing. So like I had some really scary moments that part of the reason that we float up into our heads and we disconnect from our bodies in the first place is because we experience things that are scary, that are big, scary, overwhelming feelings. And we decide that it's probably safer just to hang out up here
Yeah.
instead of actually being in our bodies, because that's where the pain lives and the fear lives and the sadness and the grief and the anger.
Yeah, all the emotions that we're taught not to feel, and that hold us back or make us crazy, or whatever we've been told.
Mm-hmm.
So you went through this process and became a life coach. So where was it that you discovered breath work?
Yeah. I was working in the coaching industry for a number of years, doing all sorts of different things, working with all sorts of other different people. And along that journey, I was running retreats with other women who were practitioners and coaches, um, and came across breathwork. I got asked actually to co-facilitate a breathwork experience for 30 women, and I had no idea what breathwork was. Um, but my amazing colleague Samantha Skelly at the time was like, she's like, no, you're going to be great. You're like, just follow your intuition. Like, she gave me the very cool notes of like what was going to happen, and
You've got the voice for it. You can do it.
exactly. And I remember being in that room. The women were doing 3 breathworks in one weekend on a retreat, and it was like one of the most powerful experiences of my life to be in a room with 30 women. You know, everyone is just like in their own experience, but together, and moving through like really deep layers of stuff that they've been, maybe holding on to for years and years and years, maybe their whole lifetime, and getting to um, experience firsthand the feeling and the power of giving people space to really move all the way through something, and the look on their faces, like on the other side, the brightness, the light, the like freedom. I just like could never forget that experience. And I just remember I felt so much energy in my body. I thought I was going to pass out.
Were you
Really.
participating?
No, I was like co-facilitating. So like I was really holding space and just like going around and like doing little bits of body work and checking in with people and whatever. But I just remember like the energy rising in the room, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is so intense." But I just loved it, and I felt something just clicked in that moment, and then, it was a number of years before I ever came back to it. But then I studied for 9 months, and then I did a ton of breath work myself, and it really like unlocked something for me on my own healing journey. It was like once I figured it out, it was literally a key in a lock, and just went, and all of the stuff around being a sick kid and all of my fear and my dad's mental health and like all of it just poured. It just poured out. And I had no idea that I was holding all that in, but I now know um how deeply connected symptoms our body symptoms are with our emotional state and our emotional, I hate this word, but like baggage, the stuff that's just hanging out unprocessed in our system. It's like undigested food material. If we don't take intentional time to digest it, it just piles up and kind of rots away in our system.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so before we jump into breath work too much, I'd love to maybe kind of take a little step back and just if you could define it for us, for folks who don't know what breath work is. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I know a lot of people have heard about breath work, but like the first time I took a breath work class, I had no idea what I was signing up for. It was just like breath work, I'm feeling a pull, give it a try, see how this goes. And it was just like on the other side, I didn't even know what had happened. But
Yes,
yeah, if you could define it for us.
of course. Yeah, I think there are, breathwork has gained a lot of popularity over the past year. And I think some people get a little bit confused about, what it means or what it is, because there are kind of two schools of thought around breathwork, or two types. So there's, functional breathing, which some of you might have heard of, like box breathing or 478 breathing, or like certain types of breathing that will elicit a specific nervous system response. Those are the types of breathing that you might practice during the day, or they might help you fall asleep, or, you might do them before you prepare for an interview or something like that. So there's that side of breath work, and that's kind of your more like day-to-day way that you would practice breathing to improve your breathing. Okay. Then there's another type of breath work, which is typically it's called conscious connected breathing. That's the breathing style. Conscious connected breathing means you breathe typically in through your mouth into your belly in a continuous circular flowing breath. And this breath has been studied since the 60s and 70s. The guy who created it, his name is Stanislav Grof. And he was actually doing research with psychedelics, and specifically with LSD, and was helping people get into altered states of consciousness where they were having spontaneous healings, go figure, releasing old trauma from their bodies, and really having deep awakenings. And when they were getting close to the end of a lot of their research, and they were told, it was made illegal, you couldn't use it anymore in therapeutics or anything. Stan somehow discovered that people, when they were doing their LSD journeys, would breathe in this specific pattern. And it's also the pattern that most people breathe in when they're transitioning to the other side, when they're dying. It's also a breathing pattern that comes up in like very interesting ways in people's lives. And so he started to do tests with people to see what would happen if we just had them breathe this way, and started to realize that, oh, wow, interesting. People can access very similar altered states of consciousness as they would taking a psychedelic, just by breathing. So
Hmm.
this was the specific breathing form, and one of the original types of breath work is called holotropic breath work. That's Stan's breath work. And conscious connected breathing was the breath practice that was done. Typically, this breathing is done to music over the course of about 45 minutes to an hour. Um, Current days, it used to be way longer, like 3 hours. Intense, yes.
Wow.
My partner and I went and did that one time. That's a whole other story. But yeah, it's usually done over 45 minutes to an hour with music. There's like rough guidance. And what happens is you breathe in this way, you let your breath build up, you hyperoxygenate your body, you deplete your CO2 stores, and your mind eventually shifts in from kind of a survival, me focused state into a more flowing, open, creative state of mind, which is where basically you can kind of have big epiphanies, or emotional releases or things like that. It's kind of like your mind goes like offline a little bit, and then your body gets to just speak and process what it hasn't been able to, because your mind has kept it all, under lock.
Interesting. So is that kind of why it's so powerful? Because it kind of, turns your brain off for a bit, gives it a break, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we all have our own defensive system. So our way that our mind protects us and keeps us safe. We all have it. This is how we survive. If you one time put your hand on the stove and burnt your hand, every time you go near the stove, your mind is very smart. It's going to tell your body, not safe, don't go near that, don't touch it, don't do it, bad. Which is, that's great in a lot of areas of life. But the problem becomes, when we grow up and we have experiences of, my dad tells me to be quiet when I am loud and I'm singing. And then for the rest of your life, it's every time you want to be loud or raise your voice or express, you shut it down. Your defense mechanism shut it down. So breathwork helps us to consciously and intentionally move past our defensive system, so that we can access all the other things and parts of us and emotion that's actually in there beyond the defenses, which most of us on the day-to-day, we're just running on autopilot.
Yeah.
We don't even realize.
It's like the stronger that my meditation practice has gotten, the more I just catch myself in trance. It's just like, really, where were you? Like, really, I'm constantly having to pull myself back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to know. So I've done 2 breathwork classes now. They're workshops, one prior to yours and then yours as well. And it was so hard. It sucked. And I always joke with my friends, I'm like, breathwork is insane, but it sucks. It's hard. What is that the defense system? What is that? That's it's not that my body thinks or freaks out about not being able to breathe. It's more so that I get caught up in this loop of am I doing this right? Oh, I'm not doing this right. Oh, you know what I mean? And then it just gets exhausting.
Yeah.
And then I don't even know if I'm doing it right in the brain. Right. And it's not usually until the very end, until I kind of chill. Is that normal?
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought this up, because this is a very, normal experience. So for the first 8 to 10 minutes of breath work, we're just building up your oxygen stores. And during that time, the mind, it's it kind of knows that we're going into things. We're starting to welcome some of this emotion up to the surface. So a little side tangent here. The way that we first learn to manage our emotions and our emotional state when we're young is through not breathing. So when we start to welcome in, big, deep breaths, the mind is like, oh shit, she's going into her feels.
Do you know where we learned that from? Or have an idea? Because I definitely know that to be true. I'm just curious if you've come across any kind of research or anything.
I think it really comes from, if you didn't grow up in an environment that encouraged your emotional expression, which most of us didn't, when things come up, we just get good at holding tension in our bodies, holding tight, collapsing, and holding our breath. You can watch people do it. It's very interesting.
Oh, for sure. I see it very often with clients, and I experience it as well. I would think too, kind of what's coming up for me right now is just like, especially for those of us who've experienced like trauma, you know, in our
Mhm.
childhood, that
Yeah.
like what you're talking about earlier, disconnect, that like just hoping that it's going to hurry up and be over. And so we're up here in our head and like holding our
Yeah.
breath. So
Yes. Yeah. When we hold our breath, um, we can't feel in the same way
yeah, for sure.
because emotions are energy in motion. So we take away the motion.
That's a quotable.
There you go.
I like
Yes.
that.
Yeah. So for the first 8 to 10 minutes, it's kind of like, this is the way I like to describe it. It's like your mind has all these guards, okay? And there's like a big brick wall with a gate, okay? So there's all these gatekeepers. And then on the other side is like all these, stuff from your past you're still holding on to. The first 8 to 10 minutes, we're trying to kind of like slowly get through the gate to the other side. So as we approach the gate and we're starting to like move into deeper feelings, your mind will play amazing games on you. Because I say amazing because it's like this happens with everyone. It's like it either wants to obsess about I'm not doing it right, or what mine does is nothing's going to happen. Like this isn't going to work this time. Nothing. I'm not going to get anywhere.
Is it
Oh,
still like that for you?
still, yes,
Oh,
yes. The mind is relentless with its resistance. But what breathwork has taught me, and this is how it ties into what I said earlier about like being in the unknown. Breathwork has taught me that your mind will always be resistant to feeling, and that we can override the resistance. And it sometimes takes a little practice to get better at letting go and get better at surrendering to your body. The place that we're all like yearning and craving to be is like that free place without thoughts, where we're in our body's alive, we can feel it all, but our mind has no chatter. And that's where breathwork can take you. And it takes some work to get past the guards. And the guards are there for a good reason, you've gone through a lot. It's just that now that you're probably an adult, you probably have emotional, you know, capabilities and are able to actually be with what's on the other side of that wall. You don't actually need the guards anymore.
yeah. I mean, I think the brain, like, you know, it has a function, it serves a function, but I truly feel like, you know, the body is so much wiser and is so much more capable of being in flow with us. So being able to turn it off, it's helpful for me to know, and just to kind of, as you were talking, me think like, okay, it's just kind of my overachievers, like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
probably going to be in like anything that I'm doing. Like, am I doing it right? Am I doing it right? Which is
Yeah.
pretty comical, actually, kind of thinking about it. It's like, really, you don't have like another loop? That's your loop?
But get this, your overachiever is a protection mechanism that you created at some point in your life when you felt deep pain, probably around not being good enough, failing. Um, I'm sure there's a moment or something happened, and then your system said, we're never going to feel that again. I never want to feel that again.
Yeah. Have
So
you
my
heard?
mind is always going to make sure that I'm doing it right and doing it the best.
Yes, Enneagram 3, the
Mm,
achiever.
yeah.
Have you heard Brene Brown's definition of perfection?
I couldn't quote it, but I do love her book of imperfection.
Yeah, I mean, I can't quote it perfectly either, but the first time I heard it, it was just like, those hardcore truths just hits you. And she basically just says, being a perfectionist is just wanting to not feel shame, right? Just wanting to
Mm,
cover up, prevent yourself from feeling any kind of shame. And I was just like, oh, yes,
yeah.
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Exactly it. That pain of not feeling worthy or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So when did you get into, I mean, it feels like it goes so hand in hand, the somatic coaching with the breath work.
Hmm.
Um, how did you navigate into that? Or I feel like they're kind of one and the same. I would think that would be like the beautiful evolution of wanting to expand on breath work.
Absolutely. Yeah. Breathwork is a somatic modality. Somatic just means body based. So, you can do therapy or you can do different things, meditation. Like breathwork is a body based meditation. So, um, when I was like, I knew I had a deep sense that I needed to work. Okay, backstory. I'm a very kinesthetic person.
Me
So this
too.
kind of pieces it all together. Like, I sucked at school. I couldn't read, I couldn't write, but like have me do something with my hands and like make things and feel it out and that's just me. So I really knew that on my healing path that I wasn't going to be a person that was going to go to therapy and whatever and just sit and like chat. Um, I needed to move things through my body. I needed to express things. I knew that my expression was going to be my medicine. And so I started doing all sorts of like very out there different like therapeutic modalities. One of them is called core energetics and bioenergetics, and breathwork goes along with that. And all of them are really um, focused on your body. Much like we've said many times in this podcast, that your body has intelligence. Your body knows what it needs, knows what to do. It's always trying to rebalance itself. We just get in the way and we protect it from doing what it innately knows to do. And so all of this work was really about like, how do we get through the resistance so that your body can just do what it needs to do to heal? And so through that journey, I learned many different somatic modalities and mindfulness based practices to work with people in a body focused way. So, my coaching practice now, we interweave breath work into it, but my coaching practice is really focused on helping people get reconnected to their bodies and to learn how to listen again and to learn how to live um, from this integrated place where their mind and their body are working together.
And why is embodiment so important, from your perspective? Like what is the
Mhm.
main reason that we need to be embodied, or like why do you view it as
Yeah,
so crucial?
that's cool. Sometimes I get these downloads, and it just pops into my head. Um, and it takes me back to the first question you asked around, what makes you soul driven. And I really believe that our souls come here, and I've had to question this a lot. Like, why am I here? This is so painful. Like, why did I choose to come here? And I really believe now, after being through, going through so much in this body, that we are here to feel. Why would we be in this physical body if we weren't meant to feel things? I tell this story about like, I imagine that like all the souls are out there in the in between, just floating around, being like, please let me go be in a body, please. And then we show up here and we're in a body and we're like, oh my God, it's
It's
cold
too
and
much.
it's too much. Like, I don't feel all of this. And so I really think that embodiment's important because the the leaders that we need in on this planet at this time are people who are connected to their hearts, who can feel pain, who can feel shame, um, and who have integrated their own past so that they can show up to create a future in a new way.
Yes. I think
And if
that's
you're
the
just doing
definition of a
that
leader,
from,
right?
yeah, if you're just doing that from your chin up, then your mind can only create the things that it experienced already.
I love
So
that.
I think it's really, really important. Um, and I
I
think
wonder
that's why
when
there's
we,
such a huge wave of it.
yes, I wonder when we got, I wonder like, because I'm sure for many of us, for lifetimes, we've been cutting this off. Like, I
Mm,
wonder when that happened, because I have to, I'm curious, and obviously we can't answer this, but like, the first time, like, when did we decide to stop feeling, because it
yeah.
can't have just been in this lifetime, right? I feel like, I mean, I
Mm,
know for myself, I look at my human design, I think it's channel 40, like I'm legitimately in this lifetime to become embodied. Like that is
yeah.
like part of one of my life lessons.
Hmm.
So clearly that's a huge thing that I'm meant to do, but like, I know I didn't, it just happen in this lifetime. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud here.
Yeah. I really think that, I mean, this is just one of kind of my like current perspective on things, but I really believe that the indigenous people of this planet, that lived here long ago, were very in touch with the earth. The body is like the earth, and they were connected to spirit and they were connected to earth. And, when colonization happened, it was like a big time of like the masculine domination overpowering the feminine. Like the feminine energy is the body, the feminine energy is spirit, is earth. And so I think that the disconnection from our bodies happened when the whole planet stopped connecting to the earth.
That makes
And
total sense.
we've been on this masculine journey for a while now of, capitalism and oppression of women and domination. And I really think we're in a time now where we're being called back. We're being called back to our bodies and back to the earth.
Yeah, for sure. I know like just within myself, like over the past 2 years, and I know that, the pandemic had a part of that, but I've always loved the earth and the planet and being outside. And I mean, animals are perfect beings to me. And, um, but, when I see what's happening to our planet right now and the things that are going on, like it hits me on a completely different level these days. It feels very deep and very personal. Um, So
Mm.
in the work that you're doing with your clients to reconnect with themselves and their bodies, like what, through breath work, but what else are you doing? And I'm sure that there's a wide variety of clients that come to you with backgrounds and traumas and those kinds of things, but kind of as a general, like, is it really hard for people to reconnect?
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I think it is. It is hard because, depending on what you've experienced in your lifetime, the ways that we have learned to cope and avoid our feelings and avoid our bodies, like we talked about the guards and the protectors, like your protection can be so strong. It's hard to reconnect. So my approach is really like, hey, you're not walking into my office and we're going into your deepest stuff. we're gonna we're gonna understand why you haven't been able to access it and why you can't get there. We're gonna create safety and trust and understand your mind and how your mind is keeping you protected and safe. And as you start to understand that, then, these little parts of you that have been hurt and gone through, overwhelming things, they start to like come out. They're like, hey, like I'm in here. Remember when you were 3 years old and you felt abandoned and all alone because your mom left? I'm still here. And so I think a lot of practitioners and a lot of people try and take people like right into the nitty gritties, and you're bypassing the fact that the mind is very smart and has its whole own system going on. And it's kind of like breaking into a building that has a security system. Well, you can go into the basement and go digging around, but you're going to get booted out very quickly. So you have to learn how to dismantle the alarm system. I just happen to know, how these systems are set up. After working with so many people and working with myself, I have a really good knowing now of how we set up our protection systems.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the security guards.
We're tight.
Manager.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, can you give her a little bit of a yeah.
Well, I mean, I know
Exactly.
like in the hypnotherapy that I've been doing when I first started doing hypnotherapy, it was so wild for me to see, these protective parts of myself coming forward and just
Mhm.
like not really having this right now, like at the very
Yeah.
beginning. And then still seeing like certain blocks, popping up over certain areas. And I was just completely like in awe of my hypnotherapist and the way that, the patience that he had and that ability to just be kind and tender and open and, with all these different parts of me that were just doing their job, but
Yeah.
weren't serving me. And,
Yeah.
and didn't need to protect me in those ways.
Mhm.
So I have like the highest respect
Mm.
for those who can work with the gatekeepers
Yes.
because it takes
Yes.
something special. I mean, I was just, yeah, completely in awe of him.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious, and I want to, kind of start wrapping up here to be respectful of your time, but I'm curious too, in regards to like naming feelings, like, is that something that's very difficult for your clients? Like, really being able to understand what it is they feel versus just like emotion,
Mhm.
reaction. You know what I mean? Because I know
Yeah.
within myself, again, I've had so many issues with my body, like you. I mean, I still have days where it's just like, get me out of here, just get me out of here.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that that's one of the things that has been really difficult for me to start connecting with is like, what am I feeling versus just like,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. One little trick that I'll teach you and your audience, that's sometimes easier. So when here's the funny thing, when you ask yourself or I ask you, how are you feeling? You actually go to your head. Your head starts to go, well, how am I feeling? And then it goes into all of these labels, right? We've made all these labels for certain types of sensations in our body, like sad, angry, whatever. So what I have people do, and when I'm working with my clients, what I do is I say, what do you notice in your body right now? And they might say, it's tight in my chest. Okay, great. Perfect. Do you want to describe what the tightness feels like? Yeah, it feels like I'm holding on to something. I'm holding it really tight. It's like really gripping. And then I'll just literally have them breathe into that place. And then most times the emotion underneath that's there will start to release itself. We don't actually have to understand it. We don't have to understand it. The mind wants to label it and be like, oh, this is anger from when I was 11 and this happened. And you don't actually have to let things go. I think that's the brilliant part of breath work is like you can just breathe for 45 minutes and cry your eyes out or just scream or let all sorts of energy out. And you don't necessarily have to know exactly what it's about. So when you notice the sensation in your body, that's usually where the emotion is being held. And then you can just give it some space and, stay focused on the sensation. Usually from there, things will unravel and reveal themselves. So the emotion starts to come up. The person might say something like, oh, I remember like every time every time I leave my house, I feel this feeling. Or I remember when I was this age and this came up for me. Your body starts to kind of show you and guide you along. So yeah, it's hard to, it's only after practice that we get better at being like, this is this emotion or this is that. And I think the best way to start is to notice the sensations in your body and get better at allowing them to be there and trust that on the other side of feeling it, you'll know what it is.
Yeah. So it's an awareness is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then like when you're talking about breathing into it, is there a specific way to breathe into it or just, inhale, exhale?
Yeah, just nice slow breath. It can be really simple, however feels good. I would say, in through your nose, out through your mouth is kind of good. Just giving it some space. And the cool thing is, say you feel that constriction in your chest. So like if you get to know the sensation in your body that that's there often, you build a relationship to it. And then when it pops up again, instead of labeling it, we get into these traps where it's like, I'm anxious. I hear that a lot. I'm anxious. I'm overwhelmed. It's like, okay, you're overwhelmed. What does the sensation feel like in your body? Feels like my brain's going to explode. Okay, great. Let's stay there. What's the pressure feel like? Can we move it? Can we move the energy that's there? Can we give it some space? Can we imagine it's like releasing through a pop bottle? Then you can start to build a relationship that's more open to the sensations and less like I need to label it so I can control it, so I can tell it how to be and what to do, so I can decide if it's acceptable or not.
I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really helpful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I can see that, like I mean, I don't even really like labels in my own life. So I can definitely see where that could, plus if it's not maybe that, then you might be creating more of that by labeling it, I would
Mm-hmm.
assume.
Yeah.
So before we jump into our lightning round or closeout questions,
Mm-hmm.
I would just love to ask you if you could share with us. You work with people in a variety of different ways. If you could just
Yeah.
share with us those different ways for folks who are definitely going to want to contact you.
Yeah, of course. So I have monthly group breathwork circles, which you've come to. I actually have one this Friday, and I'll have one next month. And um, those are it's 90 minutes. You jump on Zoom, come at your house, you set things up, get headphones, maybe a yoga mat, blanket, and you'll do breath work through the internet. This is the best way to kind of like get a taste of it and try your hand at it. And it's done in community. So there's usually about 80 to 100 people there. So we're all gathered together, and that's really fun. And that's a great way to try it out. And then from there, I have a 8-week women's program that will launch again in the fall. There's currently a wait list if you want to get on that. But that takes us through 8 weeks of like different themes that we explore. And each week we're really understanding ourselves deeper through the practice of breathwork. So it's a real deep dive into this practice. And there's like, recordings that you have each week to do as a daily practice, and writings and journal prompts and all sorts of stuff. It's really fun. So there's that. And then I work with people privately to do breathwork sessions, and then also to do deeper somatic coaching work. So I have lots of different levels of working with people, and I'm working on building out a library of recordings and different things for people to access so they can do more of their own journeys at home. But yeah, I would be really excited to connect or to work with anyone that hears this and feels like a calling or a spark.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, embodiment, I mean, who can't it benefit? That's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm certainly on my own journey as well. Um, all right, my dear. Well, let's do the lightning round.
You got me psyched up for the lightning round. Here we go.
Okay. Number one.
Yeah.
What is the one habit you can't live without?
Currently drinking sparkling water. It's a good/bad COVID habit that I've picked up, and I'm just like, look, it's right here. I can't stop with the sparkling water.
It's real. Number two, what does spirituality mean for you?
These are deep questions. Okay. Spirituality means to me just having a belief in something greater beyond this 3D existence. And for me, it's about having practices that continue to connect me to the something beyond myself. Yeah, that's the simplest form I could put it in at this moment.
There's no wrong answers. It's the best part.
Yeah.
Number three, what is your advice to someone who is looking to find purpose?
This was me for a long time. Let your personal journey of growth and healing bring you to your purpose. You can't just go out and find purpose. Purpose has to come through you, and it comes through your own journey of knowing yourself. And then once you've taken that journey, you can give back, and that will become purposeful. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Okay. Last question. It's really huge. Where can people connect with you online?
Amazing. Whew. I felt many sensations in my body leading up to that. You can connect with me 2 places. One is on Instagram, JL Mansell, at JL Mansell, or my website, jennmansell.com. There's lots of info on there.
Yeah, you have a great website.
Thank you. I made it myself.
And a fabulous photographer.
Oh, luckily he's my partner in shine. So I have an unfair advantage in that department, I will say.
Yeah, you sent me some gorgeous photos. You're like, you can choose one. I'm like, I'm still using photos from like 4 years ago that, because he's an incredible photographer. Well done.
Yeah. I'm very grateful for him, and hopefully we'll always have nice photos of myself.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us, Jenn. It was such a pleasure to have you. I feel like I didn't get half my answers or questions answered, but that's totally okay. We took this so much deeper, and I love that. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience and wisdom with the soul-driven community.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. All right, folks, if you were inspired by today's interview, be sure to hit me up on social media, send me an email, definitely leave a review on iTunes and subscribe. Don't forget to check out the Soul Driven Collective, a spiritually curious community, or you can sign up for the email list to receive podcast updates and helpful resources. And as always, when we invest in ourselves, the world benefits. Until next week.